Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Liverpool. This time it was a heavyweight clash between Manchester City and Liverpool at the Etihad Stadium. It's the first clash of the season of these two heavyweight teams who have become the staple mates at the top of the Premier League for it seems like the last 4 or 5 years, and it has been. Both of these teams have been excellent and superb in terms of how they dominated the Premier League and dominated all the other teams over the past couple of seasons. And the games between these two opponents have become, some of the biggest games of the season. Lots of very high-scoring games, which is rare to say from two teams, fighting for the Premier League. But that just shows the attacking intent and the way that both of these managers wanted to play. And going into this game, kind of still towards roughly the beginning of this Premier League season, it was interesting to see how the game would play out, because both teams have not been at their best so far this season. However, you would say kind of from the early games, you would say that Liverpool are probably shading it in terms of being better than Manchester City in terms of where they are and the points they've picked up. City went into the game actually in the bottom half of the table. They've had some very indifferent results, both home and away. And so this game was a big game for Liverpool, but it was also a very, very big game for Manchester City too. And earlier in the day, obviously Spurs having won as well took Liverpool off the top of the Premier League, and so Liverpool knew that if they wanted to go into the international break top of the league, it would have to be a win away at Manchester City. Now obviously since the season started, there's been a lot of talk about away wins and the fact of playing away becoming less of a daunting task because there's no fans or anything like that. And I think that definitely played into this game as well, like it has with pretty much all away games. I think City would have been riled on a bit more to attack and press harder if the fans were there, and I think Liverpool may have sat back a little bit more if there were fans in the stadium. But going into the game, the City lineup didn't really, I guess from my perspective, look as threatening as it maybe did at points over the past couple of seasons with no Aguero, no Bernardo Silva, no Riyad Mahrez. It was only really Kevin De Bruyne, when you look at that kind of front four or front six of Manchester City, that really looked like, he's going to threaten us and really cause us a problem. And that kind of maybe shows a bit of highlights for them, some of the areas that they maybe missed out in, and maybe some getting their targets to try and strengthen, whereas we've kind of made acquisitions in that area, the likes of Diego Jota, the likes of Thiago. But also, both teams' starting lineups were slightly changed due to the Champions League commitments both teams had in the week, with Liverpool making the decision, or Jurgen Klopp making the decision, to start with Diego Jota. There was obviously a lot of talk going into this game whether Klopp would drop Firmino, play Diego Jota, play both of them. How would they play if both of them played? We've seen a bit of a snippet in the Sheffield United game about how they may all work together, but it was uncertain how we'd play against a very, very good Manchester City team with so many attacking players in the team. And Klopp did go for it, and it kind of ended up materialising into kind of a either a 4-4-2 or a kind of 4-2-2-2 formation, where Mane and Jota kind of became the wide men, and we almost played with two strikers with Salah and Firmino, kind of really getting up there and providing a two-pronged attack up front. The game started off, I guess, very, very well from a Liverpool perspective. We were much the brighter side. We were pressing on the front foot. Salah and Firmino were cutting those passing lanes into Rodri and Gundogan, meaning that they kind of had to either fizz the ball really quickly into one of their strikers and then try and lay it back into the midfielders, or go long. And, going long would always favour our more taller defenders like Joe Gomez and Joel Matip, who actually came back into the team today as well, with Jurgen Klopp saying he was ready for the Atalanta game, but it wasn't a risk they wanted to take. The Manchester City game was more important, and given the impressive start we have made in the Champions League, it probably was the right decision to make. But going back to the beginning of the game, we were really pressing them high, and we were also getting in behind them, which I think was one of the things that has caused City so many problems in the past couple of games in the Premier League. That Leicester game in particular, where Jamie Vardy just kept getting in behind them, and that was evident to see right from the first minute. Within the first 30 seconds, we made a fantastic chance with Trent clipping a ball over, but Roberto Firmino getting in behind the defenders, but just kind of getting a bit caught up with Ederson, and the ball went out for a goal kick. But that was kind of very much the start of it. We kind of grew into the game. We weren't necessarily having more of the possession, but we were definitely looking more threatening when we did have the ball. City were kind of just passing it around the back and not really causing any real pressure to our back four. And we did end up going and scoring the first goal from the penalty spot. The penalty was one from Sadio Mane. A great bit of play on that left-hand side flank. Just managed to body feint past Kyle Walker, get in behind him, and Kyle Walker just cut across him. Kyle Walker's thigh against Sadio Mane's knee, taking him down, and it was a penalty to Liverpool. Stonewall penalty, no need for VAR. There was nothing for Manchester City to really complain about, other than the fact that up the other end of the pitch, about 30 seconds before, Raheem Sterling was kind of, I guess I would say, shoulder to shoulder with Diego Jota. He stayed on his feet. Looked like the referee played advantage, but then Raheem Sterling went over. He lost the ball, and then we broke up the other end and subsequently got the penalty. So Manchester City were a little bit frustrated about that, but there was no arguments around the penalty, and Mo Salah dispatched it perfectly. We've seen Kyle Walker make that mistake a couple of times, and that really boded well from Liverpool perspective for the rest of the game, because Sadio Mane really looked like he had Kyle Walker on toast. Well, after the first goal, you maybe thought, Liverpool would continue to press on, take home that, to press home that advantage of having the one goal. But it was actually City who upped the pressure, with a bit of enthusiasm from Pep, and also, the realization that they were behind at home to a Liverpool team that have been very average this season and have conceded. So they always knew there were going to be chances for them in this game, and even as a Liverpool fan, you knew that City were going to have chances. One, just because they're a good team, but two, also because of the frailties we've had in defence. And that's exactly what happened with Kyle Walker playing the ball into Kevin De Bruyne, who had a lot of space in that kind of number 10 position, with Wijnaldum being drawn out to Kyle Walker. And I think it was kind of down to the space opened there from De Bruyne, because Wijnaldum felt like he wanted to come out and close down Kyle Walker. But Kyle Walker had the ball out, almost on the right wing, about 30 yards from goal. If he was going to cross the ball into the box, I'm pretty sure Joe Gomez and Joel Matip would beat Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling in the air. And so Wijnaldum could probably sit off him a little bit and give him the opportunity to cross and stop the more dangerous thing to happen, which is basically letting the ball get into Kevin De Bruyne. But when Kevin De Bruyne did get the ball, he kind of just passed it on into Gabriel Jesus in the box. The first time they really had any decent play in the box, and Gabriel Jesus, fortunately, or was it skillfully? I'm not quite sure. I think it was a bit of both. I think there was a good bit of play from him, but also there was a bit of luck in terms of how he controlled the ball past Trent and Joel Matip, and then kind of just poked the ball past Alisson. Alisson couldn't really do much because he was kind of coming out at the same time as the ball went past him. And I don't think, I don't think there's too much to blame for the defence. I think the problem there was just that Wijnaldum came out, and I understand why he did, because we've had problems in the past couple of games in terms of crosses in the box. So one of the messages that has to have come from Klopp to the players is to make sure you get out and stop that cross into the box. But in this case, with the opposition and who they had in the box, it was, it didn't seem like that was the right thing to do in that stage. Making sure Kevin De Bruyne didn't get that time and space on the edge of the penalty box was the more important thing. But after that goal, City really went and kind of pressed on and continuing to win the ball back and to keep playing their possession game. They have been playing so well this season and in the past couple of seasons, and they did get the chance to make it 2-1 still in the first half when De Bruyne crossed the ball in to the box. We talked about letting them cross in. That's exactly what happened this time, but it was Joe Gomez who kind of turned his body away as the ball was going past him. And yes, it shaved his arm, like his kind of bicep region. I don't think anyone's debating that, but I think that the debate is one. It's all with the handball rule, right? In terms of, is his hand in a natural position? When you're running at that pace and the ball comes there, you've got to put your hands somewhere. And so I'm not necessarily going to lambast the handball rule. What I'm going to lambast, though, is the refereeing and what I think is a lack of responsibility from both ends. Because the referee, if he thought it was a handball, right? And yes, I understand it's at real time and all this type of stuff, right? But the referee has gone, I'm not going to make a decision because I'm going to pass it over to VAR, right? Because VAR can slow it down, have a look. And then VAR have gone back to the referee and go, no, we want you to have a look. And for me, it just seems like a real passing on of responsibility. It's almost like both parties, both the people at VAR and the referee, Craig Pawson, didn't really want to give the handball. But they were like, oh, we're not sure, you go have a look. And at the end of the day, it had to be the referee on the pitch that ultimately had to make the decision. But it was just, it was just very strange. It seemed like the referee didn't make the decision on the pitch the first time because he wasn't sure and probably didn't want to give a handball for something with the ball coming that quickly and with the play trying to kind of in a natural position. VAR didn't want to give it because they didn't want to be seen as VAR giving handballs. And so the referee had no choice but to give it. And so it was almost kind of peer pressured or kind of just pressured into giving it. Because of everything that's been going on, which is obviously the wrong thing, and I'm sure we will continue to debate the handball rule for many more episodes this season. But even more strangely than the penalty being given, Kevin De Bruyne stepped up and put the penalty wide. It wasn't even a save by Alisson. Alisson completely dived the wrong way. Kevin De Bruyne went to his left, Alisson's right, and he shanked it past the post. It was a clean contact. It wasn't a bad contact or anything. He just tried to get it too far in the corner, and he missed. And so fortunately for us, we went into half-time 1-1. We could have very easily been 2-1 down, having not really conceded any real chances to Manchester City. Manchester City have a bit of history in terms of not doing so well in terms of penalties against us. Remember the Mahrez one a couple of seasons ago when it was 0-0, that game at Anfield where he skied it over the bar. So maybe City have just a bit of a mental block against us. But the second half very much was how I thought the first half would have played out. It was very cagey. Neither team really made any kind of clear-cut chances. No team really looked on top. It was a lot of kind of sparring, I would say. And City definitely were, I think, lacking that cutting edge up front. De Bruyne kind of felt a bit lost, and it felt like those pieces around him were missing that have been there for the past couple of seasons. And from our perspective, from a Liverpool perspective, it felt like we were trying to play long, but not kind of high and long ball, but in terms of trying to get the ball in behind quite quickly into Salah and Mane. And now I'm not sure whether that was down to the rain making the surface very slippery, or whether that was down to City kind of playing a high line and Laporte and Ruben Dias not being the quickest going backwards. So Klopp hoping he could get the strikers in behind, but it didn't really work out, and honestly it was just kind of a lot of huffing and puffing, I think, from both teams, and by the end of the game it looked like both teams were really out of ideas, and both teams were happy to settle for a point. The only major real talking point from the second half was Trent Alexander-Arnold's injury. It was a strange one. He kind of sprinted a bit, and then he kind of felt his calf, and it obviously went off straight away. And James Milner came on, but it'll be interesting to see as the days go by the extent of that injury, whether that means he won't be involved in the internationals. Honestly, I think all of our team could probably do with a break, not going to the internationals, having played so many consecutive games. I think we went on a run recently of just playing 22 games. 7 games in like 22 days or something. So, our players are very shattered, and they're going to be going into another very difficult international break. But hopefully for us, it's nothing serious, and it was just a precaution, and that he'll be back very shortly. Tonight, guys, I'm going to go on to my man of the match, and this was a really tough one. I thought everyone kind of had I'd say a 7 out of 10 game. There was no one that really stood out, but for me, someone who I want to really call out, I think, because he's been so great the whole rest of the season, and that is Jordan Henderson. I think he ran things from midfield really, really well. There were thoughts before the game that maybe we would be overpowered in the midfield, having just played 2 in the midfield, but he completely bossed that. Great defensively, great attacking wise as well, and he adapted very, very well to playing into that 2 in midfield rather than the 3 in the midfield that we've been playing. I think he adapted to that 2 a lot better than Gini Wijnaldum did, and he was again another critical part of our team, and I think we wouldn't have necessarily got the result we did if Jordan Henderson wasn't playing. And then finally, the shout out to Klopp, guys, like I do at the end of every episode. And it's about that kind of front 3, front 4 situation. I think it would have been a very brave decision for Klopp to drop Jota, given the hat-trick in midweek against Atalanta. But I think part of his hand was forced by the fact that we didn't really have a lot of experienced midfield options. Henderson and Wijnaldum were only really his kind of preferred midfield option, with Thiago out, Fabinho out, Keita just coming back from injury. So I think that kind of fed into Klopp's thinking as well. But I think in the future, in the big games, I think we should go back to the 4-3-3 if we can. And if that means dropping Firmino or dropping Jota, you know what, I think that's a risk that I'd be willing to take. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, guys, please make sure you subscribe. If you're listening to this on all the podcast platforms, then please drop a follow. And thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Okay.